video is going to be all about the story or timeline of my chronic illness, going all the way from before I was sick all the way up until right now. I've had to split this video up into two parts because it was really long. This is part one and part two will be up next Sunday. And when it is up, I will have a link to it up here and in the description box so you can go and watch part two. Part one will include a little bit of background to what I was like before my illness, my initial symptoms and how I first realised I was sick, the diagnosis process and my year 11 at school. And part two will focus on my year 12, or the worst year of my life, year 13, my year 13 again, and my gap year. I was originally going to include my first year at university, but I have decided that that could be a whole separate video on its own, simply because of the length of the video. I started having symptoms around 15 or 16, I'm now 21, and over that time I've obviously changed and grown, and a lot of those changes are heavily impacted by my illness and the experiences I've had. So this is going to be an interesting one. Before I get started, if you enjoy the video, make sure to like it and comment. I'd love to hear from you, and subscribe to my channel for more videos every Sunday. Okay, so I just want to preface this video by saying that I was a very active and very healthy child. I did a lot of exercise and I was quite fit, and I didn't get sick very easily. When I was 12 years old, me and my family walked up the trail of Yosemite Falls in California in the Yosemite National Park. The top of Yosemite Falls is 7.2 miles with an elevation of 2,700 feet, and it is strenuous activity. So that is the type of physical activity that I was able to do at the time. So I just wanted to show that this illness is not something that has always been like that for me. So when I was 15 years old, in year 10 at secondary school, I started having my first symptoms of chronic illness, or chronic fatigue, or ME, depending on your preferred terminology. I have multiple theories about what the trigger of my illness was, but discussing what caused my illness is a whole other video. So when I was 15, I started having symptoms. I became less fit and I didn't really know why. I specifically remember just getting more out of breath when doing sport. I thought it was a bit weird, but I thought I was just unfit and maybe I was eating too many biscuits, and as time went on it encroached more and more into different parts of my life that I struggled to do things. There was this one specific time I can remember when I was at my grandmother's house and she was having a clear out of some of her belongings. We were clearing out some of the things she decided she didn't want anymore, and I felt exhausted. I remember I just carried something out of the living room and I came back into the living room and I sat down and I just felt completely drained. And I remember my mum at the time saying, you know, you need to be helping. Don't be lazy, effectively, which is not her fault because we didn't know, and I didn't know either. I think thinking back, one of the big things that really should have signposted to me that there was something seriously wrong was on a trip to Switzerland. So what was happening is we were whitewater rafting, which was an amazing experience. And right at the end of the whitewater rafting, it opened out into this lake. And so the instructor said, right, everyone off the raft, swim to the edge. And I thought, great fun. So I just hopped off, you know, like everyone else, like my brother did. And about halfway to the side of this lake, to the land, to the jetty, I ran out of energy and I thought I was going to drown. And I had a life jacket on, but the effect of the life jacket, I don't know if it's the same for all life jackets or this was a particularly bad one, but I was trying to swim on my front and it was having my front up too high, which meant my face kept being in the water. And in that moment, seriously afraid, and I didn't mention it. And the reason was because I didn't want to be dramatic. Thought I was being dramatic. I thought, well, I just overreacted, so I didn't mention it for years. And when I thought back, I realised, that was part of the beginning. That was one of the things that happened in the beginning that I didn't know to attribute to chronic fatigue. My mum always tells this one story about how she knew I was sick. Was that when we were shopping, and I've always been a big fan of shopping, and we'd been in one shop and I was kind of dragging my feet and I just said, honestly, I'm so tired, can we go home? I don't want to be here. And she always says that that was the moment she realised that something was really wrong, just because I was so tired I had no interest in an activity that I'd always really loved to do. Around the same time I started really struggling to stay awake, so I'd get home from school, I'd lie down on the sofa and I'd just fall asleep. For most 15-year-olds, I don't know, I don't think that that's normal, and it certainly wasn't normal for me, and I could not stay awake. The next year, when I was age 16 and I was in year 11 at secondary school doing my GCSEs, this is when things really started to pick up. So I'd had a couple of symptoms dotted around here and there before, but now it really started to get going. So this is the time where we went to a lot of doctor's appointments and my mum really started pushing doctors to diagnose me. We went to so many doctors, different specialists. My mum definitely told some doctors off for not taking it seriously enough. After she told off this one doctor, he then became interested in the case of the medical mystery, and then he found it really interesting and managed to get me into the paediatric ME service. By this time I was still getting progressively worse. We were close to a diagnosis. There was the suggestion that maybe I had chronic fatigue, and I didn't really know what it was, to be honest, and I was too tired to care. Once that was suggested, I didn't have a diagnosis, but once it was suggested, I was like, yeah, that's it, and I just kind of went with it. So someone asked me, so you have chronic fatigue? And I was like, yes. And she was like, someone else I know has ME. Is that the same thing? And I was like, I had no idea. Honestly, I don't even know what I said. I think I just made something up because I didn't know. I hadn't done any research, I didn't know anything about it. So then I did get a diagnosis from an ME specialist, and he, sat us down and said, you do have ME, and I went, great. So he, said, you do have ME, it's not in your head, it's a real condition, blah, blah, blah. He explained it to me, and then I understood what it was. So I had my diagnosis, yay. Not out of the woods yet, not even close, man. So by this point I have my diagnosis, but I'm really struggling with school. So I stopped doing core PE and I stopped doing the physical aspect of GCSE PE. I stopped it completely, I just did the theory. That was the first thing we cut, which did help because the last 2 hours of the day on Thursday was sport, the whole last 2 hours. So which meant that from that time on Thursdays I could go home at lunchtime, which really helped. And then obviously it continued to progress, so then I was excused from PSRE, which is health and religion, general things like that, and it still kept getting worse. So then I started dropping GCSE subjects. I dropped RE and I dropped art. I would have dropped more, but quite a lot of them I'd already done coursework in, so I already had some grade. So we thought that probably with the coursework I already had, I would probably be able to get a good enough grade in them. And then at the end of that year was year 11 prom, which was a big old deal to 16-year-old me. And me and my friends, we all thought that was a really big deal. Looking back, it was what it was. But so I got ready at my friend's house, I went to prom. I was still on a downhill slope for my chronic illness and I felt pretty rubbish by this time. The actual prom ended, I think, at 11 o'clock, and after that everyone was going to after party. I, however, got picked up from prom, went home and went to bed because I was dead from this. And I felt really heartbroken, honestly, just because I wasn't well enough to go. So on one hand I was heartbroken, and on the other hand I really didn't want to go anyway because I was tired. So I went to bed. And that was the end of my year 11. So over that summer I did get a little bit better, just because I wasn't pushing my body as much as I had been before. So that was part 1 of my chronic illness story. Make sure to come back next Sunday to see part 2, where we'll be talking about when things get really bad and then when things get much better. So that's quite the roller coaster. And I will link it up here and in the description. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like it and comment below. I'd love to hear from you. Also subscribe to make sure you see more content from me every Sunday. Bye bye!